Have you encountered something you can't explain? Do you believe in the paranormal but haven't experienced it? Are you a skeptical believer too? My name is Kristen and I host the Paranormal Girl podcast. My show is an education in the paranormal. Join me as we explore a different topic each season and dissect origins, theories, experts, and so much more. Whether it's life after death, cryptids, ghosts, or any other paranormal topic, we will pull it apart and put it back together again to fully understand it. If you're a fascinated skeptic, a believer yearning to know more, if you're looking for an education in the paranormal, I'm your Paranormal Girl.
Hello, everybody. You're listening to Fireside Paranormal Podcast. My name is Jordan Cline. As always, I got a fun show planned out tonight. But first, a few announcements. Newsly is an audio app for iOS and Android. It picks up web articles about the most trending topics on the web at any given moment and reads them to you in a natural human voice. For the first time in the history of the internet, the entire web becomes listenable. Browse articles from topics you choose and start playing. Stop scrolling, start listening. You can follow any topic as specific as you'd like, from sports, science, to Bitcoin, or even the Kardashians. It'll find you the latest articles and read them to you aloud. They also have podcasts, so explore trending podcasts from over 50 countries. My show, Fireside Paranormal Podcast, is there too. Download and use Newsly for free now from www.newsly.me or from the link in the description, and use promo code FIRESIDE, where the eyes are ones. I'll also put that in the description, and you receive 1 month free premium subscriptions. I also want to remind everybody to check out American Paranormal Magazine at paranormalzine.com. The new issue should be out now, and they're always good, so make sure you check it out.
Are you into the paranormal? True ghost stories, Bigfoot and alien encounters, or high strangeness and conspiracies? Well, if so, then you should check out my podcast called Somewhere in Dreamland. My name is Ken Mark, and every week I interview authors, researchers, and experiencers alike in the fields of the paranormal, cryptozoology, ufology, and spirituality. So why not take a dive down that rabbit hole with me and search for Somewhere in Dreamland wherever you listen to podcasts. That's Somewhere in Dreamland.
Go check out Ken's show, Somewhere in Dreamland. He does a great job, so if you haven't subscribed to it yet, go check him out. This week's featured story comes in from Hillary from Moundsville.
Hello, my name is Hillary Upperman. I actually live right here in Moundsville. I'm right near the prison. Okay, I have a few really interesting stories about the prison. See, from my back door, I can actually see one of the very corner guard towers. And I've actually had multiple times that I actually seen someone in that tower at night.
Really?
Yes. And it's not just me. I've had people at my house who've witnessed it too.
Wow.
And sometimes when I used to work in the later evenings and I'll come home late at night, I've actually seen, I saw people running from the prison walls. And then when I look down to see where they went, they're not there.
And they look like regular people.
Yeah,
right?
People trying to escape the prison, and then there's nobody there because it hasn't been working for years.
Yeah, I believe it was shut down in 95?
Mm-hmm. My stepdad used to work there. He wasn't. I think he started right after the riots, but he has some really interesting stories from that place. It's so scary but so fascinating.
Now, did you ever go after the people that you saw? Did you?
I looked at where they went, and there's just nobody there. Another fun tale is I had a tour here where I got to actually go visit the prison cells. And they have this one where you can actually go into the little single cells.
Yeah.
And I remember I went into the cell and we were all mostly by ourselves. And I went in and I turned around and I could just feel someone blow on the back of my neck.
Oh.
And I just left. I just got out of my cell and just joined my friends in the other cell. I smooshed in there with them. And honestly, I had weird dreams for a whole week. I think something attached to me and came home with me. So it's still such a fascinating and beautiful place. I mean, I welcome anyone to come take a tour at this prison. It's just so amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, it looks like a Gothic castle.
Yep. And I mean, I've been a fan of cryptids and spirits forever. I love it, and UFOs and aliens, like all that is so fascinating. I make stuffed animals of it. I'm Pinky Plushie Maker on Tumblr if anyone wants to see some of my spooky plushies I make.
Go check them out.
Okay. You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Hillary. And if you want one of your stories to be one of our featured stories, make sure you email me at firesideparanormalpodcast@gmail.com. You can either write the story out or send it in audio, and we'll get you on the show. Patreon is something that we do now here for Fireside Paranormal, so go to patreon.com/firesideparanormal. Give a quick shout out to Amy Lynn 747 for signing up to the Patreon, and she is awesome. She's one of our mods at the Facebook group Fireside Paranormal Hub. She's always been a big supporter of the show, and really excited to have her on board with the Patreon. I want to give you a quick rundown on what all the tiers are. There are 4 tiers. The $1 tier is the name drop on the show and access to the Discord. The $3 tier is name on the show, Discord, and then a 1-inch sticker. The $5 tier is the name drop, Discord, a 3-inch sticker, and then we have something really cool. It is a $20 tier. I call it Join Me by the Fire, because everybody in that tier group, we're going to do a drawing each month, and the winner will be on the show with me. So definitely a chance for you to join me by the fire. So we're going to include you in the show. So hop on board, have fun with it. I'm actually going to be adding some bonus audio to Patreon as well. Some behind the scenes. So the banter after the interview is over with the guests, might throw in some special episodes, things like that. So definitely going to be a lot of fun to be had as we develop this Patreon. So join with me, everybody. I'm looking forward to it. All right, I want to get to my guest. Join me by the fire as we welcome Tom Mihok. He is with the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society and Fay West Paranormal. Tom, you with us?
I am, sir. How are you?
Great. It has been a while. For those of you that have just started listening to the show, Tom was actually, I believe, the second guest we had on. So if you want to roll on back through the episodes and catch up on Tom and what he does, definitely a great story that he's got. Tom, catch us up on what's been going on in your neck of the woods.
Well, quite a bit, actually. I guess for a brief rundown for anybody that may not have heard our show in the past, like you mentioned, I'm a field researcher in the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society, and we do a lot of our research in the Chestnut Ridge. Chestnut Ridge is really, really active year after year for Bigfoot reports, UFO sightings, hauntings, other strange cryptids, pretty much the whole, smorgasbord of paranormal. And since you and I talked, I guess it's been a few months now, we've had quite a bit of activity up in the ridge. In fact, I think when we were speaking, I had been telling you that it was fairly quiet at that time. It was a little quieter than normal.
You were just starting to get back into investigations, I believe.
Yeah, and boy, did it really just boiled over. In the past month, we've had, just in the one small part of the ridge, the Chestnut Ridge is 100 miles long. It goes from Indiana County, Pennsylvania, all the way up until about Morgantown, West Virginia. So it's almost about 100 miles long and 10 miles wide. And, peppered throughout the ridge are a number of towns and villages, and then there's a lot of very remote, deep, isolated forest areas as well. So, it's got everything. And just in the last few months since we spoke, we've had about 5 or 6 Bigfoot reports up there. We've had a number of UFO reports. Now, I don't typically go into the UFO investigations, but that's just something we've been made aware of. And we've had some strange cryptid sightings up there as well. And we actually started focusing, and I'll kind of, once we get into the meat of it, I'll go back to the beginning, but we kind of been focusing on one particular area up there, and like I said, it's just been off the charts for the last couple of months.
So I want to ask you, I want to interrupt you just because you said a few things that piqued my interest there.
Sure.
One, you were talking about UFOs, and I believe last time you had said that there's usually some kind of connection between like Bigfoot and UFOs, like they tend to be seen not too far off of each other with the sightings.
Well, it's not. Well, let me put it this way: it has been reported.
Okay.
It's not. It's not with every report or necessarily a high percentage of the reports, but there's enough of the reports year after year that researchers have now been forced to kind of look into the connection.
Okay.
In years past, you were either in one of two camps. You were either Bigfoot is an undiscovered primate, a flesh and blood animal, or you were in the camp that Bigfoot's paranormal, as in alien, interdimensional, etc. And if you were in the flesh and blood camp, most researchers did not even acknowledge reports that indicated, Bigfoot being seen with a UFO or with spheres of light or so forth. If you were in the other camp, you didn't acknowledge anything that was purely flesh and blood related. But over the years, there's been enough of the reports coming through that the researchers on both ends pretty much have to acknowledge, both sides of it. So like I said,
a little
it's
bleed
not
through.
That, yeah, it's not that every time there's a Bigfoot sighting, there's a UFO or, fairy lights or whatever else. But again, there's enough of them on a regular basis that you have to at least take the data down. And that's really what it boils down to.
Now, you said too that you had other cryptids. So what kind of stuff are y'all seeing?
Well, my mentor, Eric Altman, took a report. And the main part that we're investigating the ridge now is up in Fayette County. This report actually happened, I believe, in Westmoreland County, or it may have even been Armstrong County. I don't recall off the top of my head. There was a gentleman that lived on the ridge that was hearing ungodly howls on his property, and he had a nice, a nice sized property that bordered the forest on that part of the ridge. And, he called Eric and said, I'm hearing all these incredible howls. I don't know what to make of them. And a few years prior to hearing these howls, he had a sighting of, and, he didn't know what to call it. But the way he described it was a large wolf-like creature that basically galloped across the road as he was driving down the road. It had, he said it had glowing eyes. It had, kind of a strange gallop to it. So it was something, and this gentleman, very familiar with the animals in the area, definitely wasn't a coyote. It was much larger than a coyote. Wasn't a bear. Really didn't match any known animal that he knew of. So he, didn't know what to make of it. He only saw that creature once, never saw it again. But then the howls right into the woods off the tree line on his property started to happen. So, is it the same thing? We really don't know. We haven't really had a chance to go out there and really dig into that one because we've been so tied up, in the other area of the ridge. But that's one report.
Wow.
We've had some recent reports on the ridge of thunderbirds.
Really?
Yeah. There's been at least one or two in the past few months.
Now, how big are they saying they are?
Well, Eric Altman and Stan Gordon investigated this. I don't really know all of the details specifically, but so I really don't know the exact size that the gentleman or the witness claimed to have seen, but they did say it was quite large. If I'm not mistaken, it was a daytime sighting. So it was not something at night where, could have been anything, and it would have been much easier to misidentify something at night. According to the witness, it was quite large, and it's a typical classical Thunderbird type of sighting.
Wow, how often does that happen on the ridge?
Thunderbirds or just?
Yeah, Thunderbirds.
Not as often as all the other types of reports. The ridge, mostly you're going to get UFO reports, Bigfoot reports, but occasionally, you do get the Thunderbird sightings. We've had, one thing that for your listeners that are interested on the ridge, what I will recommend, if you want to hear some really, not hear, but read about some really crazy reports, Eric's mentor, Stan Gordon, who is the premier investigator of the unknown in Pennsylvania, he just had a new book come out called Creepy Cryptids and Strange UFO Encounters of Pennsylvania. Pick that up. Go to Stan's website or Amazon and pick that up, because the cases that he documents in there will absolutely, you'll just be shaking your head. It's, some of them are just really, really incredible to read about.
Are any of those stories around where you are?
Well, those Stan stories are all through the ridge. There are some, I don't believe right in the specific area that we're investigating now, but Stan, he covers pretty much all of Pennsylvania, primarily the ridge, and a lot of Stan's cases, and a lot of the cases Stan has worked on, Eric has worked on as well, and they're scattered all through the ridge. But a lot of it is Westmoreland, Fayette County, Armstrong County. That's the section of the ridge that we typically investigate the most.
When you go on an investigation, right, because you're just picking different spots on the ridge, right, to go to, do you just spend an evening? Are you there for the weekend? Are you camping out with all this going on? Like, what does an investigation look like?
Well, we live close enough to the areas that we investigate that we typically don't stay overnight. We head out anywhere from, I don't know, we may get there anytime between 6 or 8 o'clock, and then we'll, depending on how active it is on a given night, we'll stay, anywhere up till midnight, 2, 3 in the morning. Just really depends on what's going on. We pick our areas that we investigate based on both historical sightings and current sightings. So a number of the areas that we've investigated in the last few years have had recent as well as historical sightings, dating back 5, 10, 15 years ago. And these areas typically get reports each year. The area that we're investigating a lot right now, there have been, the area we're investigating right now actually had the very first Bigfoot report documented on the ridge back in 1931. But there's also been several reports in the last couple of months. So we started off at a particular point and worked our way, a few miles away from that area. And then the activity there just, was just unbelievable. So there's a several mile radius that on any given night, we can go from point A to point B to point C and, just have all kinds of different activity. Everything from howls to strange lights moving through the trees to, Bigfoot sightings, just all kind of different activity.
Now, with your investigations that you've done, I know you said, we talked a little bit beforehand, here lately you've been seeing more and more activity, on your investigations, right?
Well, yeah. I guess I should probably go back to, backtrack a little ways to kind of explain more about that. few weeks ago, when Eric and I were in Ohio at a paranormal event, Eric was speaking and doing a presentation. We got a call that night while we were at the hotel room in Ohio that there had just been a Bigfoot sighting on the Chestnut Ridge. This particular sighting happened just a few miles down the same road of another sighting that happened almost a year ago to the day. So when we got back from Ohio, we made arrangements to go and talk to the witness, Stan Gordon, Eric, myself, Ricky Cherby. We met with the witness, took all the information down. I won't go into a lot of the details only because it's still an ongoing investigation, and I don't want to, kind of reveal any information that at this point is still confidential. The one detail that I will share is that there was a particular sign along the side of the road, a speed limit sign, that the gentleman said when he came around the bend and he saw the creature, he said it had glowing eyes, and the eyes were just above the top of the speed limit sign. So we measured the speed limit sign, and the speed limit sign measured at 11 feet high.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
it wasn't a baby.
It was not a baby. No, it was a, if it was a baby, I'd hate to see mom and dad.
Yeah.
So we figure, if the eyes were right at 11 feet, you have another 6 to 8 inches to the top of a head. So you're essentially looking at something between 11 and a half to 12 feet tall. This sighting took place within a few miles, well, actually more like within a mile and a half of a particular place that somebody came outside on their break late at night and heard howling that the witness couldn't describe or couldn't identify, I should say, what was making the howls. And it came right up through the tree line, up the mountain a little bit, further up above this, where her building is. So to skip ahead a little bit, we actually met up with the witness. They took us up what's essentially a very rocky dirt road that leads up into the mountain. This is not a like a driveway. This is not a street with houses on it. You're basically, if you don't have four-wheel drive, you're not getting up there, I guess is the best way to put it. So we went several miles up, and we found the area, we found a clearing, and this is where it gets a little bit weird. It's a very, like I said, very isolated. It's a few miles from the closest building or house. There was a very small cemetery nestled back in the mountain, back in the woods. No sign, no foundation of a building or anything close. Like I said, the roads were, barely passable. So it's not an area that, 40 years ago, there was probably a church sitting here and it was torn down. I mean, it's, like I said, it's very difficult to get into this location. And this is where it gets, like I said, it starts to really get a little crazy. We went up one night, and we had a film crew with us who was filming a documentary. And for the first hour or so we were there, really nothing happened. And then we started to hear some, best way I can describe it is, if you've ever been to a wedding and you hear, when they're getting ready to do the toast, you hear that tapping of the spoon on the champagne glass. Yeah. Well, we started to hear sounds like that, very faint, right in the tree line. Very, very faint, kind of spread out. We're stopping. We're really trying to focus in on what could be making the noise. We're looking through the brush. We thought maybe someone hiked through there. They left some things hanging on a bush, or nothing. Couldn't find anything. About another 20 minutes later, after we had heard some of these scattered noises, we started to see crystal blue lights probably about the size of anywhere between a baseball to a golf ball, kind of dancing through the trees. And again, we are, at least 2 to 3 miles away from the nearest building, from the nearest house. There is no main roadway going anywhere near us. So we watched these lights dancing through, and myself and one cameraman and a few other people were at this little clearing just below the cemetery. Farther down this dirt road, maybe about a quarter of a mile, and then around a bend, we had the rest of the group. So we were kind of spread out, trying to cover more than just one area. They were watching the lights, and we were watching the lights all at the same time.
Wow.
They're radioing us, saying, "Hey, are you seeing this?" We're watching it, and we're each describing to the other exactly what is dancing through the trees. Everybody saw it. After a little while, we started to see down this road towards where the second party was. We noticed a larger red sphere of light, and about 2 or 3 feet to the left of it was a smaller orangish white colored sphere of light.
How big would you say they were?
The red one looked to be about the size of a basketball.
Okay.
The orangish white one was somewhere around the size of a softball.
You could call it a dreamsicle.
I'm sorry?
The dreamsicle one?
Yeah, the dreamsicle
The
one.
orange and white.
And it was wild because we're looking at it and we're thinking, oh well, it must be one of the other cameraman, or we figured it was something very explainable because the lights were just down the road, they weren't moving. Figured it was somebody there, maybe changing equipment or doing something. And after a minute or two, they didn't move. I started walking down the road towards them. Now, as I'm walking towards them, the other 3 people in the group I was in are standing in the clearing right behind me, and they're watching the same lights that I'm watching. And these lights were right in the middle of the road, probably about 5 feet, 6 feet off the ground. I really don't know what made me do it, but I picked up my pace. I started jogging toward them.
Toward them?
And it looked like, toward them. I mean, I wanted to know what the heck they were. Call it my my curiosity. Hopefully it wouldn't have killed the cat, but
curiosity killed the Tom.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, the ridge can be a little treacherous, so it probably wasn't the best idea. But I started jogging toward them, and still thinking that it was the other cameraman, or something very explainable. And it seemed like the lights started moving towards me as I was moving towards them. So I was purely convinced it was the cameraman or something. To make a long story short, I got to about 5 feet from them, and at this point, I'm still thinking it's got to be the cameraman or somebody. And again, for those who haven't been in the ridge at night, especially in a secluded area like that, there's no ambient light. I mean, this place, if you don't have a nice flashlight, you're not going to see more than a foot in front of you. So I got to about 5 feet away from the lights, and convinced it was the other camera person, I started to ask, Seth, is that you? Well, as soon as I spoke, the lights just vanished, just disappeared. So I hit my flashlight right away, and there was nothing around me. There was absolutely nothing around me. I just stood there dumbfounded. I guess that is what a lot of people would call fairy lights or spook lights. No sound to them. The only way I can describe them is the red one, like I said, about the size of a basketball, just completely self-illuminated. It was a solid, dark reddish color. the dreamsicle one, as we'll call it, the whitish orange, probably about the size of, somewhere between the size of a softball and maybe as big as a cantaloupe, but it was, definitely smaller than the red.
Yeah.
And no noise, just poof, gone. And I just stood there dumbfounded. I mean, I was trying to explain it in my head. I was trying to figure out what I had just seen. I had nothing. Even thinking about it now, it really blows my mind because I was convinced it was a camera light or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to have those disappear, to be that close. I've seen lights in the trees, strange lights in the ridge before. I think we talked a little bit about it the last time we talked. But this, I mean, I could have reached out and touched them. And, it kind of, after I thought about it a little bit, it kind of sent a chill down my spine because not knowing what the light was, I got really close to it. Now, fortunately, the cameraman that was behind me in our group caught this on video.
How about that? Now, does it project well on video, or is it?
I haven't seen the footage itself. I was told that it was caught on video. So their documentary is gonna be, I think, an 8-part series type of documentary. It's, I believe, gonna start initially on YouTube. It's Small Town Monsters, and it's basically about the ridge. That's why they were there with us that night, and so I'm looking forward to actually seeing it when it comes out. I believe it should be coming out here fairly soon, because it is just, I mean, I don't know how to explain it, Jordan. It's really, I've done the paranormal stuff for a long time. I've seen apparitions. I've seen doors shut. I've heard voices. I've caught EVPs. And that kind of, the first time you see or hear something like that, it's kind of like, ooh, it's a little bit of a, kind of like an eye-opener. This, if I would sit here right now and think about it, my jaw still drops. I can't, you just had to experience it. I don't know really how else to explain it.
Now, how far away were you at your closest?
About 5 feet.
And
like I said, I felt like I was within inches. Like if I would have extended my arm, I was like maybe a half a foot from touching these lights. And that's why I was so sure that it was the cameraman or somebody, because, you've done this paranormal stuff a long time. You don't typically get that close to something.
No.
Whatever it is.
Now, because I'm picturing this all in my mind, right? Right. I'm not there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Are you out in a path and these things are right in front of you, swirling around you? Is it kind of,
no,
you're right outside the tree line and you can see it in the tree line?
The little road that I went down that connects from the clearing to the intersecting road farther down where the other group was, it's just a dirt road, probably about, I'm going to say 6 or 7 feet wide. And then, it's just trees and forest on either side. And when I saw these lights, I they were right in the middle of the road, which is why we all thought it was the other group coming down. We thought, they're coming down to switch positions with us, or, whatever, something. They're coming down for whatever to regroup. And then when they didn't move, that's when I started going toward them. And then the faster I went towards them, the quicker they seemed to move towards me, which again made me think it's the other group. When I got about 5 feet away, like I said, it was pitch dark. I mean, you couldn't see anything around you. And, when we go out and investigate, we typically don't turn the flashlights on unless it's absolutely necessary, because, if there is something in the woods or whatever, we don't want to scare it away. We want to do the best we can to draw it in. So, I was in complete darkness. The only light that I had was the moonlight and the lights that were in front of me. And like I said, maybe about 5 feet away. And as soon as I started to speak, that's when, for whatever reason, they just vanished instantly. There was they didn't dissipate. They didn't fade out. They were just gone. It was like if somebody turned a flashlight off. It was that quick.
Wow.
So as soon as the lights vanished, I immediately turned my flashlight on, and I was completely alone. The group that I had left was about 150 yards behind me in the clearing, and the other group had never even came onto the road. Now, what was really interesting, the other group who was stationed, down the road and on the intersecting road, they saw the red light and the white light through the trees. So they saw them also. They were watching them go towards our group as I was going towards it. So everybody there in both groups saw these lights. Nobody has any idea what they were. I can't even begin to tell you what they were.
What was going through your mind when you turned your light on and you're on that dirt road by yourself, completely alone? You don't see anybody, and the people you're with are way down in a clearing. What was going through your mind?
The first thing that went through my mind was, holy crap, what was it? Because, you hear all these different things are reported up in the ridge. You hear about fairy lights and mini UFOs and all these things. And then I thought, I just ran towards these things, and fortunately, whatever they weren't anything malicious, because it might have been bad.
Well, yeah.
But I didn't, the thing about it is I didn't feel, they didn't feel threatening. They didn't feel ominous or.
That's how they lure you in.
Well, yeah, I guess. I'll be honest with you, Jordan. I'm baffled. I still sit and think about it. I was talking to Eric, we were up there, and there's more to this area that I want to tell you about. But, when we were up in the same area just this past Friday night, we actually got there. It was still light. So we parked in that same clearing that I was at, and I walked down to the same spot that I guess you could say had this encounter or whatever it was. And, I walked down there in daylight just to look around, and just knowing how far I went away from the group and how far the road actually is from the clearing to the intersecting road where the other group was around the corner.
Yeah.
I mean, that had to be a good 300 to 350 yards total.
Wow. I
went about halfway where I ended up seeing, these close up, and it was amazing though. I mean, as baffling as it was, I think I'm more amazed and more in awe than anything, because I can't even begin to explain it. I don't know, were they spook lights? Were they fairy lights? Were they, I have no idea. They made absolutely no sound. Didn't, like I said, no type of ominous feeling to them. It just, you really just thought, man, there's somebody with a light coming down the road. I'm going to go meet up with them, and then poof, and turn my flashlight on, and there's absolutely nothing.
Now, did it project like a flashlight?
No. I mean, it looked like, the best way I can describe it, it looked like a little, or not little, but a glowing red ball of light. It didn't leave a trail. It didn't leave, like a flashlight, if you move it quickly, it kind of leaves that light trail.
Yeah.
Nothing. It was just a solid, dark-ish red light, but it was illuminating itself. In other words, it, with a flashlight or some type of light that you're projecting, you can see where it comes from. This was self-illuminating. Same with the other colored one, the creamsicle one, which was a lot smaller, about half the size. But, nothing ominous, nothing that really had me worried. And, I guess you brought up a good point. That's how it draws you in. But let's put it this way. I was close enough. If whatever it was something bad, it had more than enough opportunity to do its bidding. I just wish I knew what it was. I have no explanation. So I'm not saying that it was anything in particular.
But it was definitely
But
an experience.
Oh, it was, yeah. I mean, I'll never forget it. I mean, like I said, I've seen apparitions doing ghost hunting. I've heard little kids giggle when there's no little kids in the room. I've had some things that have sent chills up my spine. And this, it didn't scare me. It didn't, like I said, nothing threatening, but I was more in awe of this than I was of anything else I've ever experienced. And I really wish I had an explanation, but I don't know what to tell you. I mean, so if somebody wants to think of them as spook lights or fairy lights or whatever, you hear a lot of stories about things like that. I guess that's the thing that it.
Can you explain what those are? For people that are listening that have never heard of spook lights or fairy lights, how would you explain those? And I know you're not trying to classify what you saw because it's an experience in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But as people report, fairy lights and spook lights, things like that, what are they saying they're seeing?
Well, typically the most common way or that they're described are dancing lights through the trees. They can either float through the trees in kind of a dancing motion, or sometimes people will report seeing, lights appear, in one spot, disappear, and then within seconds they appear 10 feet to the side and, kind of bounce around that way where they kind of pop in and out. And a lot of people, I guess one of the more common theories or, about those lights is that they are part of the Fae, that they're elemental spirits, or, some people have even called them mini UFOs. So, I mean, I guess to different people, depending on, your point of view, you're going to view them as different things. But, yeah, I mean, as I've said, I've seen lights in the trees before. We've seen Eric and myself, Ricky Cherby and myself, we've seen them in different areas of the ridge. We've seen them since, but I've never been this close to them. I have never, was never able to see them in such detail. Typically when we see them, when a lot of people see them, you see them from, 20, 30 feet away, maybe 20 yards away. So you can definitely see them, they're bigger than a firefly. It's, It's not an insect, doesn't move like an insect, doesn't look like an insect, but I've just never seen them this close up. So whatever they were, I mean, absolutely amazing. They were just, it was incredible to experience. But still just leaves me baffled.
Now, you said you had another story from that area too, right?
Oh, yeah. So, again, we've been hitting that area quite frequently because especially that particular night, we had so many things happen. So I'll jump ahead to this past Friday. Myself, Eric Altman, a couple people from actually the founders of the Fay West Paranormal, Connie and Chris Brinker, we were up in this area again, and Kathy Altman, Eric's wife, and didn't see any lights this night. However, we had a lot of other things happen. Probably within 10 minutes of us getting there, we started to hear howls in the wood. Several of them were very recognizable. They were, you could hear coyotes. But then shortly after that, we started to hear howls that we couldn't explain. We recorded them. There was one howl in particular that was recorded on Saturday night. Eric had gone back to the location. I wasn't able to attend this night. And when he went back, he recorded a howl that he had actually sent out to someone to have analyzed. And it came back at a much higher frequency than any canine, and it came back as not a match for any known animal.
That's incredible.
this howl was a very loud, guttural howl. And it's very similar to a howl that Eric captured several years back on a different area of the ridge. And like I said, it's been examined, and the software, everything that the person he sent it to, no known animal made this sound. I believe it was several hundred megahertz higher than a canine, higher than a human. So can't say what it was, but this is within probably a 5 square mile or a 5-mile radius of where the Bigfoot sightings that have happened recently took place. So this area in general has had Bigfoot reports, the strange howls, the ghost or spook lights, whatever you want to call them. Just a few weeks prior to the Bigfoot sighting, there was a UFO sighting, probably about 5 or 10 miles away from this area. So again, the ridge it never fails to to live up to its reputation. It always seems to deliver.
What is it that a Bigfoot sounds like when it howls? Like how do you differentiate that? Like when you're out there, you say, "Oh no, that's a coyote, or that's somebody's dog."
Well, I can't really tell you what a Bigfoot sounds like, only because we've never actually seen one howl, so I can't say definitively, what it was that made the howl. Mm-hmm. But let me just put it this way. Coyotes have a very distinctive howl or bark to them.
Yeah.
So you can, most of the time, you can pick the coyotes out right away. Now, the coyotes were responding to this howl, and the howl repeated a few times in response to the coyotes. So it was as if they were answering each other or taunting each other, or, definitely reacting to each other. So, I mean, we heard the coyotes. We've heard the typical other sounds, the barred owls, all the different things you'll hear in the forest, which is why when somebody, goes out to get into this type of investigating, you want to make sure that you are familiar with the local wildlife.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, coming over from the paranormal side to this side, that was probably my biggest challenge, because, I probably drove Eric crazy the first several times we went out. I'd hear something. Oh, what was that? Oh, that's a tree frog. Well, you don't hear a lot of tree frogs when you're investigating Moundsville Prison.
Right,
so,
yeah.
I was learning as I was going. But, we heard a lot of the definite recognizable wildlife, that this howl was just, you knew it wasn't anything that should be there, but you didn't know what it was. And just like, I think I may have said the same thing when we talked previously, whether it's wood knocking, Bigfooters go out and they hit the trees and do the wood knocks, they do the whoop calls. Even when you get an answer, you can't say that it's a Bigfoot. Just because you go out and wrap your axe handle on a tree 3 times and then you hear, another knock in response, unless you see what it is that makes that sound, you can't say what it is, which is what I think a lot of people, so it's a bad habit a lot of people fall into, just like with ghost hunting, where every noise, every creak, well, that must be the ghost. Every time a lot of people go out in the woods and they're not familiar with things, or they don't see what makes the noise, and right away they just assume, oh, it's a Bigfoot answering me. Well, most likely it's not.
My head immediately went to like one group, out on this side knocking and howling, and then there's like a completely other group, down the ridge a little ways that they don't know the other group's investigating. They're like, we're communicating with it, and it's just two guys out there hitting trees and yelling at each other.
Exactly. And it sounds like an Abbott and Costello skit, but it's really the truth. Because you don't know what's hitting that or making that sound. So I mean, when you go to certain areas like the Chestnut Ridge is still fairly low key. It's getting more well known, but it's not on the level yet of like a Skinwalker Ranch or for Bigfooting, like back in the 90s or early 2000s. Salt Fork in Ohio was very, very active. So it became oversaturated. Everybody was flocking to that area. Now, to go to Salt Fork and really do any type of research, it's pointless because there's so many people out there doing it. It turns into exactly what you just said. You're out there hitting a tree. There's another group, a quarter mile away, and they hear you. Then they start hitting the tree, and that's a lot of times what happens. So that's why you have to be really, really, skeptical on evidence. Just like with ghost hunting, you have to really rule everything out. And if you don't see what made the sound, you can say, "Oh, it was interesting," but I don't know, because if you don't see it, you just don't know what made the noise. But to get back to your earlier part of your question, what a Bigfoot sounds like, for those people that are listening that may be a little bit newer and haven't heard them, there's a researcher named Ron Moorhead who he recorded sounds in the Sierra Mountains in California. It's been a while since he recorded them. They're called the Sierra Sounds. And you can pull them up on YouTube. They're very accessible, very easy to find. And it actually sounds like monkey chatter. He had those sounds analyzed, and just like, I'm not saying it was the same type of thing or the same thing that made the howl we recorded, but just like with our howl, if I'm not mistaken, his sounds were determined that they weren't of a known animal. He recorded just, it's almost like a conversation. It's almost, I can't really even describe them. I just recommend any of the listeners tonight, yourself too, Jordan, when you get a chance, Google them, look them up on YouTube. The Sierra Sounds by Ron Moorhead.
I'm going to check that out.
Just sit there. Yeah, definitely sit there and take a listen to it. Now, that's not exactly what the way the house sounded the other night for us, but who's to say what it was that actually made the sound? We don't know.
And that's going to...
All we can...
I have a tie-in question that kind of goes with that.
Yeah, sure.
Because, I have friends that are out on the West Coast, and we had a guest, just the other day, or just a few weeks ago, that's from, like, the Washington area. And she was talking about, Bigfoot there. And Bigfoot has such a strong hold on the, Pacific Northwest.
Absolutely.
Why is it so known there and not in, the area you are in PA? Why does it always go to that? And then flip side to that, is it the same creature? Is it a type of the same creature? Your thoughts?
Okay. Well, the first part of that, actually, I think that Bigfoot is more known in that area just because when you think back to the famous, like the Patterson-Gimlin film, when you think back to some of the more well-publicized sightings or, recordings or footprint casts, they came from that area. A lot of sightings, definitely, the Pacific Northwest, that's the number one area. Now, having said that, Pennsylvania has the third most reported Bigfoot sightings behind Oregon and California.
Really?
Yes. I believe right after PA, is Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. So Pennsylvania is, as far as the East Coast, if you want to see a Bigfoot, or at least have the chance to, I should say, Pennsylvania is probably your best bet. Ohio, definitely. I mean, there's been a lot of activity over the years in Ohio, but it happens everywhere. I mean, look at Falk, Arkansas. People may not associate it with Bigfoot, but if you think back to the old, well, it's a cult classic. I don't want to say it's a famous movie, but The Legend of Boggy Creek. For those people that may not have heard of it, that is an old docudrama based on Bigfoot sightings and incidents that happened in Falk, Arkansas back in, I believe, the 70s, in the early 70s. And, that particular movie got a lot of people into the field, because when a lot of people saw that little documentary, it's basically a reenactment with some of the actual witnesses. And it was supposedly, true events, true reports. And when a lot of the current researchers today saw that movie, that's what sparked a lot of interest and got a lot of people started in this. But in our area, like I said, the Chestnut Ridge in particular, for the last 100 years, there have been consistent yearly sightings of Bigfoot, consistent yearly sightings of UFOs, hauntings, other cryptids, everything from thunderbirds to black panthers to mountain lions. Now, a mountain lion per se is not a mythical creature like Bigfoot is thought of, but it's something that is not supposed to live in Pennsylvania.
I was going to ask you where you put that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that, it's not a legendary creature, but it's not something that's supposed to be here. Just like we've had a number of Black Panther sightings. Now, again, that's not necessarily the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot, but it's not supposed to be there. And while you can always have somebody who had an exotic pet and let it go, again, it's just one of the strange things that we get reports of here and there. But I mean, the Chestnut Ridge, it's year after year, and it's been for well over, like I said, 1931 was the first reported Bigfoot sighting on the ridge. And if you would go, if listeners go to the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society website, we do have a reference page on there that has just years worth of newspaper articles, sighting reports, so people can go on and actually look at some of the cases that were reported over the years, and it's a steady flow. I mean, it's not, there was a couple in 1980 and then a few more in 1985. I mean, this is year after year. Like I said, we've had somewhere in the area of about four Bigfoot reports in the last few months. And that's just, there were reports on the farther end of the ridge too, that one lady walking a dog had what she said was a Bigfoot walk across the path right in front of her in broad daylight.
Jeez.
So, it's not just one area, but it's just the ridge throughout. Like I said, a lot of people view the ridge as a portal or a window area like Point Pleasant, because it's had so much activity over the years and of so many different things. There have been reports of the Bigfoots that are more paranormal. There have been ones that seem more, flesh and blood. It's just amazing. We're going to have to get you down here one of these weekends and take you up into the ridge.
I'm interested. After you talked about those lights, I think that alone is very intriguing, let alone everything else you got going on there. But
yeah,
but I'd love to see those lights.
Oh, believe me. Jordan, I'm going to tell you, like I've said about 30 times tonight, I sit here and think about it even today, and my jaw drops. To see it, you can't really do it justice until you experience it. And I've seen these, whatever you want to call them, these spook lights or whatever, I've seen them like maybe 3 times now in different locations. Never that close up. But, you know, again, just it's just something you got to experience. And it seems like more and more people are actually seeing them. So it's something that's becoming more and more common and reported more often.
Now, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, let's say they're in the area, you know, or they're in PA or somewhere around you, and they have to report, or they want to report something, or if they want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, if they've got a Bigfoot report, definitely go to our website, Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society. There's a form on there that they can fill out. You know, we ask them to fill everything out. We will keep their identity completely confidential. We're not going to post their name. We're not going to, you know, make anything public, but they can definitely leave a report there. They can look me up on Facebook. They can look Eric Altman up on Facebook. You know, that's probably the 3 best ways to get a hold of us if somebody does have an experience or a sighting. You know, again, we handle the whole state of PA. If we're in Western Pennsylvania, if a report comes in Central Pennsylvania, we have people in that part of the state as well. So, you know, we're all over the state. So if anyone listening does have a sighting or something they'd like to talk about or something they need checked out, by all means, get a hold of us through the website, and, you know, we'll do whatever we can to answer some questions and help them out.
Do you cross state lines?
We will. I mean,
Okay.
you know, we do have members of the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society in West Virginia. We have some in Ohio, you know, New York. So, I mean, yes, it's a little harder for us depending on what state, but we do have some people scattered out that we can refer, you know, a person to, and we can, and you know, if somebody has a sighting and experience something they need help with, and they're in a state that we are not actually active in, Eric knows a great number of credible, trusted researchers.
Perfect.
That if our group can't help you, then he more than likely will have somebody in your area that we can kind of, you know, refer you to.
Very cool. Tom, thank you so much again for coming on the show. I love having you.
Anytime.
You know, we got to keep having you come back, because there's always so much happening on the Ridge.
Yeah, you know what? Whenever you're ready for another Ridge report, you know, just let me know.
That's what we're going to start calling it.
Yeah, there you go. You know, the bi-monthly or whatever you want to do it, the Ridge report. Yeah. And we got to get you down here, Jordan. You're not too far away from us, so we got to get you down here, and I want to get you up into the Ridge and let you experience some of this stuff and see the areas we're talking about. You know, because like you said earlier, you know, you're trying to picture these places and this stuff in your mind, and man, when you get out, you know, it's a lot like the West Virginia Pen, which I know you're a huge fan of as well as I am.
Uh-huh.
The Ridge is one of those places that just has a feel to it. And when you're there at night and you're in a very secluded area, part of the Ridge, and there's no light, and I'm telling you, it's just, you have to experience it, because, you know, I'll talk about it every day, all day long, but it doesn't do it justice until you get out there and actually feel the energy of the place. And you know, when you start having these howls happen and the lights and everything, like I said, it's just really something you got to experience. So we're going to work on getting you out there.
I'm for it. I think it'll be fun. I've had
Absolutely.
invites before, right? But I didn't trust the people inviting me to go out into the woods. I would go with you, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very wise decision because if you go to there are parts of the ridge. If you go to the wrong part, you could be in trouble. So yeah, we want to make sure we have you out there with somebody that knows what they're doing. So we'll definitely be in touch with you here, and we'll get you down for a weekend or a night and get you out and get you some experience there.
Very cool. Thank you, Tom, and we are going to talk again.
Absolutely. Anytime, my friend.
All right, bye.
Bye.
And with that, the fire is out. Thank you so much, Tom, for being on the show. And thank all of you out there for listening. I really, really appreciate you. The messages that you send me, the emails I get, all the feedback that I've been getting on Twitter, I really, really, really appreciate y'all. It has been making my whole week. Y'all have been flooding me with all kinds of messages and posts and reviews, and it's very special to me. So thank you so much. If you haven't out there connected with me on social media and you want to, Fireside Paranormal Hub on Facebook. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, at Fireside Parapod, Parapod on Twitter. FiresideParanormal.com is the website. You can check out the merch. And again, Patreon.com/Fireside Paranormal. I am wanting to put a lot of fun stuff on there, and I'd love for you to join me and be a part of it. So until next week, everybody, don't be afraid, only believe.